Let's bring in Ross Tucker, CBS Westwood One color analyst, host of the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Let me start with Dallas. What do you think they will do? What do you think they should do?
I think they will stick with Cooper Rush, Dan, and I think that's probably what they should do. If you think about it, right, from the perspective of the 49ers, not only what you referenced about the Niners probably wanting to keep Jimmy G in their back pocket and see a little bit more of Trey Lance, but one of the reasons why the Niners reworked his deal, Dan, is because when Jimmy leaves this offseason as a free agent, I think we all assume he'll probably get a starting job somewhere because there's a bunch of teams that could probably use him. Well, that means he's going to get paid enough money that the Niners get a third-round compensatory pick. So if you're the Niners, there's no reason to trade Jimmy now unless you get something better than a third-round compensatory pick. Are the Cowboys really going to give a second-round pick for 4 weeks of Jimmy Garoppolo? Because it would take him a week or two to get ramped up. You make a good point about, his health. Not only that, the Cowboys are not a good team right now. I part of me wonders if Jimmy would even want to go there and start for 4 to 6 weeks behind a bad team, bad offensive line. They don't have very many weapons. So it doesn't seem to make sense for anyone. It's a shame because it feels like the Cowboys season is kind of almost over before it even starts. But I think they're going to just stand pat with Cooper Rush. Doesn't make sense from my standpoint for either the Niners or the Cowboys to make that trade. So it's going to be Cooper Rush time. Maybe they can win a couple games, but they're not very good. I mean, on some level, Dan, it almost gives the Cowboys a built-in excuse for a season that I think was already going to be disappointing anyway.
But they are the Cowboys, and that's why we hype them up. People at Dak Prescott, MVP candidate, Mike McCarthy maybe, going to be coach of the year. Why lofty expectations with the Cowboys?
Well, just because they're the Cowboys. And they're the biggest national brand, I guess I'm assuming with the Yankees in our country from a sports standpoint. I don't know. I got to look, Dan, and see how many nationally televised games they have coming up because we gotta find a way to flex out of those. Okay.
Well, I'm going to tune in to see Micah Parsons. I will tune in to watch Micah Parsons. Can Micah Parsons play quarterback?
They should try it. At this point, they should. Look, Dan, he literally grew up like half a mile that way from where I'm sitting right now. I saw his third high school game ever, Dan, when he was a freshman, and he had like 4 or 5 sacks. And I texted the guy at Penn State. I go, you need to look at this 9th grader at Central Dauphin High School. They offered him a scholarship, Dan, the next week. He got his first scholarship after 3 high school football games. You should have seen him as a running back. He looked like Jim Brown. I mean, he was like the Jim Brown as a running back around here. It was amazing.
All right. If you ran the Niners, do you stay with what you have? You keep Trey Lance in there and you keep Jimmy Garoppolo. How long does the experiment last with Trey Lance before you start to get a little nervous that maybe Jimmy Garoppolo gives you a better chance?
This is actually one of the reasons why I was a little bit skeptical of them keeping Jimmy. I think this helps them to have a better backup option. It gives them more ability to maybe trade Jimmy if someone like the Cowboys came with something. But sort of the omnipresent threat now of Garoppolo hanging over Lance's shoulder, it's not good, Dan. I mean, the kid only played 1 year of FCS football. It's actually amazing that a guy can play 1 year as a redshirt freshman of FCS football and be the 3rd pick in the draft. If you would have told me that would ever happen, but he just hasn't played that much. So if you're the Niners and you're really looking at this thing the right way, I think you got to keep Trey Lance in there until you're almost out of it. I mean, I think it's got to be at least 6 weeks, and he's going to play better. He's going to get better. I mean, I hope we're not spending too much time judging a kid by how he played in his first game in an absolute monsoon.
Yeah, I agree. I just wonder, and I mentioned this last week because I had a source who told me, Jay Glazer reported it yesterday, and that is there are veterans in that locker room who had to be told be all in and support Trey Lance because some of those veterans realize, at least from what I was told, Jimmy Garoppolo will give them a better chance to go further this season. Whether that's, how many or not, but that is something that I think is the underlying current there.
And Dan, that's a real thing, okay? I can remember distinctly after the 2004 season in Buffalo, where we went 9-2, like our last 11 games or whatever, we were really excited going into the next season. They either cut or traded Bledsoe. I can't remember which one. And I remember calling some of the veterans, some of the other starters on the offensive line, and they were like, that's it. I'm not going up there once all offseason. They moved on from Bledsoe to go to J.P. Lossman, and it was so deflating, Dan. It was like we had a chance to make a run, go to the playoffs, and you just knew you weren't going to be as good with JP. You just knew it. And that's got to be tough. And I know, Garoppolo's friends with a lot of those guys. I mean, he hangs out with like Juszczyk and Kittle and those guys. That is tough to swallow when you've been to a Super Bowl and on the precipice of another Super Bowl, and you feel like you're a Super Bowl caliber team. The fact that they had to say that to them, that Glazer's reporting that, it seems like the Niners players know that even if Trey Lance gets better, it's still not realistic for them to have a chance to go to the Super Bowl. It's more of a transition year, a rebuilding year. That's tough to give up when you're in the middle or towards the end of your career. It's tough to just have a give up year or a year where you probably realize deep down you don't really have a chance to win the whole thing.
Ross Tucker, CBS Westwood One color analyst, playing for a tie or going for two. I love what the Giants did. Even before the play, the fact that they were going to go for two and go for the win, loved it. Then you have the Texans, who played for a tie. Help me understand the philosophy with these two organizations that Lovie Smith doesn't and Brian Daboll does go for two.
Well, first of all, it's an absolute travesty that there are ties. I can't tell you, Dan, you know how many man hours go in each week for these games? And when you tie, nobody gets to feel the reward. When you tie, both teams feel like they lost. It's not mission accomplished when you tie a game. It's awful. The Daboll thing is interesting because it ended up working out. But really, if you think about going for two there, right, it's 50-50 whether or not you get it. And then even if you do get it and you're up by one, the Titans are then going to be much more aggressive offensively to make sure they get in field goal range because they're losing. And there's a decent chance you still lose anyway. Now, fortunately for the Giants, Bullock missed the kick and it worked out.
Yeah.
But they're very fortunate on a lot. I mean, Saquon Barkley was dead to rights in the backfield. That was an amazing job by him. The Lovie Smith one, I'll never understand. And his comment after the game was like, well, we didn't really have much of a chance to win anymore, so I didn't want to have a chance to lose. Hey, Lovie, was fourth down and whatever it was, fourth and not even that long, midfield. That's I'll tell you this much, Dan. 2 first-year head coaches, win or lose, the Giants players love the fact that Daboll went for it. Win or lose, none of them will say it publicly, or in this case, tie. The Texans players, they're not happy with Lovie Smith. They would have wanted to go for it. Not a single player would be like, Coach, I was thinking about it, and it actually was a good tactical decision that you decided to punt it so that we didn't lose. No. They want to win the game. What does Lovie Smith think is going to happen, Dan? Does Lovie Smith think that the Texans are going to be 10-6-1 and that ties the difference between making the playoffs or not? What's he even doing?
Ross Tucker joining us on behalf of DraftKings. I'm watching the Bengals, and I'm watching Joe Burrow. Now, I'm trying not to overreact, but Joe Burrow played the position as if he didn't know how to play the position. And I know that he was coming off surgery. You're going against a divisional opponent that has a very good defense. How do Bengal fans not overreact to what they saw in that loss to the Steelers?
Well, they don't overreact because if they could make an extra point and it didn't get blocked, they still would have won, right? So that's where they find some comfort and solace in the loss. But the thing for me, they have a whole new offensive line. He got sacked 7 times. Now, this was actually my big critique of Burrow last year and why I don't think he's as good as other people do. I don't think he's a top 5 guy yet. Dan, he takes a lot of sacks.
Yeah.
He takes some sacks that he shouldn't take. And then yesterday, he combined that with the 4 interceptions. One's a pick 6. He fumbled as well. It was rough. Now, for the Bengals offensive line, they're going to need to come together. I mean, they're all new. So that'll take a little bit of time. The Steelers had some pretty good blitz packages that the Bengals struggled with. They'll be fine. I really do think the Bengals will be fine.
Good to talk to you as always.
Always. Thank you so much, Dan.
All right. That's Ross Tucker joining us on behalf of DraftKings Sportsbook app. You can download it. Make sure you use the promo code Patrick. Get $200 in free bets instantly. Place a $5 bet on any football game. So the promo code is Patrick, only at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL.